the Logitech C920 webcam. We're going to cover some of the settings, some of the benefits of this particular webcam and webcams in general, some of the disadvantages if you cannot get software, and we'll also be looking not necessarily as a face-off but just looking at two different cameras. So this is the Osbot Meet 2. This is a more newer camera, and then I haven't got a box for the Logitech, but I've got another Logitech here because this is part of the wife setup. So the idea is, what settings can we do within the software? Do we need it? And some of the downfalls that you might come across with webcams. One of the things we're going to look at is this. So if we're in an office environment, you might see, if I just go for the Logi, you can see they've both got this issue. It's banding. It's lines moving across the screen in front of my footage. So you can see that a lot more clearer now on this particular one. That's because I've got a typical office light that isn't ideal for video. So you might get this on fluorescent bulbs. This is an LED, but it's an older one. Don't use it. I've just brought it down from the loft. But you'll see that we have a banding. The light itself is brilliant, loads of illumination, but it's adding a banding. So my only way of dealing with that is to turn it off. There's nothing I can do on the camera. I would need software. So when people say it's the best camera, it's the worst camera, it kind of depends to your situation and what you can do on your machine. So the Logitech C920, if you can't get software on your machine, it might be that you've got a group policy and your company says you cannot install any additional software. This camera might not be for you. If you can, there is settings to deal with that flicker. So we're going to walk through some of the ideal things you could do for your webcam before we actually turn on the software. So get your webcam ideally at eye level. So you're looking straight at the camera. That's what you want. You want the camera at eye level. The other thing is, if you can manage your environment, your overhead environment, so the lights, if you've got lights coming down here and you've got these type of things, it can make you look a bit either panderized if the light's in the wrong position, and these things to give you a flicker. So ideally, I've got glass running across there and technically a glass roof as well. So the light coming from there would be perfect. But in an office environment, you might have brilliant light coming through the window. That might not be constant, but you might not be able to move your desk to take advantage of it. So saying have the light facing you doesn't necessarily work for everyone. Ideally, do not have a lot of light coming from behind you, because as you can see, the ceiling, that's all white. If that was all the background, it would be blown out and the camera would be really struggling to keep me in focus, and it would think it's got the perfect shot, because the shot, if you imagine cameras when they were born, they had one purpose. If you can imagine that scene from The Lion King, was to expose the entire scene, particularly the face, but the scene at 18% grey. If you don't understand, don't worry about it. But they're programmed to look for a certain amount of level of light. Because I'm wearing a white shirt and I've got white walls and a white ceiling at the moment because the sun's coming through, that's helping this a lot. If I stick on frontal light, which we'll come to this in a moment, that's even improved that. If I go to the mix shot, so you can see on both. So let me turn that off for a moment, and we'll turn that on. Now you might be looking at the Osbot and thinking, oh my god, the Osbots are really brighter. That's because some of their settings within the software is being tuned, which you can do in the Logitech C920 once we get to the software, as long as you've got, your company will allow you to have the software on the machine. So frontal lighting, I've just turned one light on. I don't have a second light. Sometimes it's difficult if you're in a work environment to have loads of light on you. You might be able to get away with one. If you're in your home environment, if you imagine you've got a clock, a watch, 12 o'clock going straight up, ideally you want the lights at 10 o'clock, let's get this right, and 2 o'clock, so to position the light. And if you can, imagine the watch that way, so 12 o'clock is in front of you. If you've got the lights at 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock, basically 45 degrees, that would give you ideal lighting. You don't necessarily need professional lighting, you just need good quality pro-consumer lighting that is made for video. If it's made for video, you're not going to get that flickering bulbs. You can get color lights and they look great in the background, but they flicker as well if they're not made for video. I can leave link, or I will leave links to all the gear I'm discussing in the comments and the descriptions below. The other thing we want to look at, blurred. You can use software in Zoom and Team to blur the background. It generally looks terrible. People lose fingers and part of their bodies as they move around. Ideally, if you can declutter the background, easier said than done, I know, but you don't necessarily need a blurry background. You get a nice lens. If you have a mirrorless camera, you can stick that on there and have a lens that'll give you a blurry background. But the problem with them is they generally overheat if you're using them a long time, whereas webcams, they can run all day without a heat issue. So that's one thing to bear in mind. So declutter your background. If you think of shows like QVC, the news, the morning talk programs, they generally have a set, and they're not having a blurry background. So if you can make a bit of a set behind it, that would be perfect. Quality microphone, always go for a quality microphone. Sounds better. We'll show, or you can hear the other cameras in a moment. Frame yourself correctly. I'm going to go to the webcam at the moment, built into the laptop, as you see. And we see a lot of this where people aren't framed, so they might have the camera at the laptop at the right height, but now they're not framed properly. As I said, this is on a standing desk with two boxes to move the laptop up to this height, but I'm not framed properly. Now, if we look at the camera while we're here, if I turn the light off, so this is the built-in camera. As you can see, there's a lot of white there blowing it out. As far as the camera's concerned, it has enough light in the scene, or the best it can do with if the laptop's 10 years old, the technology is probably about 12, 15 years old within this. So if I turn this light on, you'll see it does improve. So get yourself framed better, get some frontal light. This is still a potato cam. If we look at the Logitech, so we're not using the microphone, we're using the Logitech C920's microphone, and again with frontal light. With a second light here or reflector adding more light in, I would be illuminated. Sometimes webcams, unless they got tint control, struggle with getting red faces. They tend to add an awful lot of red in it. So this is a webcam. Let's go to the Osbot just for reference. So this is the Osbot with the front light on and without. Let's go back to the mix shot. So the other thing you'd want to do, if you're doing meetings, as well as you've got the camera at the right height, try looking directly at the camera. That can be achieved by having a little confidence monitor or a teleprompter, not to give you a script, but so you can see the person in the gallery view or the head-up view in Teams and Zooms. And I'll leave a link to that. I've got a separate video on that as well, so I'll leave a link to that video as well. The last one, which I've got in bold, is test. As you plug in, if you're remote working and you're plugging in and disconnecting, when you plug in stuff, it tends to mess up your settings. Windows has a habit of screwing up audio. The Mac behind me, and all Macs, tend to have an habit of screwing up the video. So if I plug in this, the webcam, because it's got a microphone in there, it thinks, okay, this is the default microphone. So it might not select this one. Sometimes if you put them in sequence, plug in the webcam, then plug in the microphone. But if you've got them in a dock, I would go to settings, just check your settings, do a quick test recording or a quick test meeting to make sure everything's working. Once that's done, and this is the best we've got from it, we now need to go into software. So I'm going to go into the office environment. Let's go to the Logi. So my main concern is, can I get rid of this? So if I've got this webcam and I can download the software. So this is what the software looks like. I should move here a bit, so you can see. So ideally I should be looking there, but I've got the laptop there, and this is the wife's settings set up, so I can't mess around too much. So if I go to the software, you'll see there's this little pill button here. If I press that, it now says I can select flicker free. At 60 Hertz, I've got a flicker. If I go to 50, you see that flicker's gone. So for me to have this, I needed software access. So if you are on a part of a company policy that doesn't allow software, we're checking with them. I know some people I know that in a corporate environment, they've allowed whitelist certain software and certain ones aren't. So once that's done, we can also go and look at the settings within the camera itself. So if I move this up, I've also decided to use an old mouse as well. Let's see what the environment noise can pick up as well. I generally like a trackball. So the camera in this one, we've got defaults, but I can go punch it in 1.5 times, or I can go 2 times. I think that's a maximum. I can go in between that, but I think 200% is maximum. Once I've got that and I punched in, there is this is what comes with the software. I can move up and down. If you're using something like eCam on the Mac, in their recording and live streaming software, you can have presets where it's already programmed based on a pan and tilt, so you can move up and down automatically once you program those scenes, which is quite nice. Exposure. So at the moment it's on automatic, so as it gets dark the sensitivity would come up. If I was wearing a dark shirt, the sensitivity would change. But if I wanted to control my light, if I've got lighting on front of me and another light, and I've controlled this light, I may have another light behind, just trying to give some separation, maybe add some practical lights so there's some interest. So if I'm controlling it and I'm not reliant on the sun, I could basically say, let's go for turn off auto exposure. See, that would be too bright. So we'd be going to 1/20. Now I get the band in. So we'll get 1/60. I'm going to turn it into auto. Auto seems to be the better option here. Image, I can change auto white balance. Your lights in the environment can have an impact. So if I turn auto white balance off, you can tweak. This laptop screen is not calibrated, but I can change there. I can change brightness, contrast, saturation, sharpness. I might pump up sharpness a bit, but all of that I can do within the software. So now, is this camera any good? It's a lot more better now I've got access to the software. Focus, I generally find the autofocus is on this is quite good if you've got plenty of light. If you're struggling, you can turn autofocus off and just have it set as manual. Again, if the focus is hunting, that can be quite fatiguing for somebody if they're trying to watch you in a meeting and you're coming in and out, not being focused and blurred, and in focus and blurred again. So if you've got access to the software and you've got that problem, just turn it off and go for a manual setting. Move yourself into the right position, or the focus slider in the right position. So that's the benefit of the software. So if you get the software on your machine, you can make this camera do an awful lot more than just out of the box, accompanied with a good quality microphone. This microphone is, I'll show some B-roll pictures, but this microphone, as well as it being USB, so you don't need any additional interface. The interface is built in with a microphone, but there's also an XLR. So if down the road you want to upgrade your kit, you certainly can. I'll leave a link in the description below. Video lights. So video light, about 60 to 80 quid. You can probably get 2 for that price. So this is his big brother. It's 4K. It's a lot more sensitive. It's a lot more cleaner. So as I said, the Logitech C920, I wouldn't spend more than 50, 60 quid. The Osbot Meet is a newer camera. That's roughly, depending where you're getting it from, about the same price as this. So I will do video comparisons separately on each of the webcams. So now we're going to go into a dark environment just to see this setup there. Okay, I've brought the webcam from the studio into the office. I've reset it so it's back in the default mode. This is the Logitech C920. Now, even if you're not going to use the webcam as your main camera, it's great as B cameras or behind the scenes. So the camera you're looking up there, that's an Osbot. I have a camera, you can't see it, but we'll see when we go to there. There's an overhead on this PC setup here. I have a webcam there as a side cam. I can do things like that. This software is I'm actually using something called eCam. This is the behind the scenes of that software, and that's allowing me to switch.
So I can have multiple cameras then into my production at minimum expense, and they also work great as a backup, because the big camera there, they can, depending on the temperature, overheat. And you can run fans. I have done a video on how to keep these things cool, but webcams are made to, it's a bit like camcorders, they're made for endurance, whereas these are not made to endure long periods. Sometimes in a cooler environment, not a problem. So let's go back to this webcam. So we're in default settings. I did have flickery lights, and I brought some bulbs to get rid of that flicker, much as what we had in the studio. I did have some household fittings there, and they did have normal bulbs, and they were causing flickering. So I replaced them. I did them the other day. So I replaced them with these bulbs and then put gels on them. So I'll show that again. At the top, there's like a blue gel and there's like a purple gel. The black foil is actually theatre foil that can go around. I've got some, if I go back to this scene here, to flag off some of the light so it doesn't go all the room. So that, what I was saying in there, to trying to control the environment, default settings. So we haven't got a problem with anti-flicker. There's a teeny bit on the blue light right at the back over there, but it's hardly showing. There is some. I'll replace that bulb and gel it, and then I'm going to put foil, the black foil around it to stop the spread of light. But if I did have an issue, I'd just turn this and then the anti-flicker. The main settings here, same as what we did over there. I can change the crop. So if I was saying wasn't standing so close, I can get it to punch in. Default. Exposure, this is the one we'll change here, because I'll leave on auto. Now, if you can see that, this is white. And if you see, as I move stuff more white, and the settings change, because it's the amount of grey, the 18% grey within the room. Now, if I move this up, this is grey on this side, this is white, this is grey. If I move grey in front of the webcam, like I said before, the goal of the webcam is to have 18% grey, and the bulk of the frame is full of 18% grey. This is what's on this card, so it's hardly done anything to the actual webcam settings. Now, if I move this down, out the webcam, there was just a slight focus change. Now, if I bring this in, this is white, and I said the webcam is looking to fill the overall frame, it's looking to 18% grey. So if I bring this white in, it will adjust the webcam until it is 18% grey. Never mind what you do with the lights, it will always try to achieve 18% grey. So if I put all different colour lights in there, it'll take them into consideration, try to make 18% grey. Now, the only way to stop that, and the same thing happens with an expensive camera. So you can spend £1,500, and if you leave it in auto and don't change the settings, it will do the same thing. So we're going to go to exposure, turn it auto exposure off. Oh, first thing, we'll cover low light compensation, and I'll tell you what that does. Now, if you've got low light compensation on, it will slow the camera's shutter speed so it can get more light. The slower the shutter speed, the more light it can get in. So if you've seen photographs where they have the trail, so on the cars you see the red light trails, that's because the shutter speed's gone really low. So low light compensation is there's not enough light in the room, I will slow the speed of the camera down, and then you'll end up with all kind of blurriness, and in some cases more processing. The more you can make your camera efficient, the better it's going to be the other end of zoom and stuff like that. Oh, the other thing I did cover, I should touch on it, I mentioned a confidence monitor. So the camera I normally look is down there, and this screen here reflects what I'm looking at, the zoom, the team meeting, on this piece of glass, so I can still look through there as if I'm talking direct to that person. The camera's struggling to get enough light in, and then it'll slow it down. So that's low light compensation. So I'll turn that off. The other thing is auto exposure. It's going to try to expose everything for 18% grey. Now, if I put this in front of it, And if I put this in front of it, nothing changes now. We've changed the rules. We've said we're in charge. What I want to do is increase some of the software might be gained. In this one, it's called ISO. So if I bump it to 600, sorry, ISO to 800. And if I put that in there, that's almost white. Now, if I was to know I've got that spot on, that would be white. Assuming I wanted that color, we got shutter speed. I could slow it down to 1/30. That would give a kind of more smooth, potentially blurred image. As you can see, because I've slowed it down, it's getting more light in. So if I was doing that, I can knock the ISO a bit down to maybe 600. That's a fairly bright image still. My shirt on the recording looks slightly overexposed. So if I go 500, yeah, that doesn't look too bad. Other things I can do, we're still in auto manual. I can go to image, take it off white balance, auto white balance. It's trying to look at the frame, auto white balance off that. I think I need to probably go, my light's probably nearer 5400. That should be white. I've still got a bit red in me. Ideally, unfortunately, this doesn't have tint control, but I can change the brightness if I wanted to knock the brightness back a bit. That'll darken my background. I can increase contrast if I wanted to become more contrasty. Saturation. It doesn't, in this particular software, look, it's just made me really orangey red. So I might knock that back down to 50. In this one, I move the slider. It doesn't take effect until I've let go. Sharpness, might bump that up to say 50, 55. Tad more, 58. That's it. And ideally, I could do with taking some of the red out of the face. Can't do that anymore. If I move to eCam, and again, you could probably do something similar with OBS. I'm looking at a piece of software, and I'll leave a link to that video. It's about £5. It's for Windows. And what it will do is all your different webcams, it will take them settings, and then you can control the settings, and you can even punch in and then save it as a profile. You can, again, take the same webcam, make a new set of settings, and you can control all of that using something like this, a Stream Deck. So you could have daylight punched in, evening punched in, evening wide, then you can have all your different settings. And if you've got 2 or 3 cameras, even if you're not using anything like eCam or OBS, you'll remember those settings. So if you're in Zoom and you can just press a button, then again, this is Windows only at the moment. So if I just zoom there, you'll see this is the camera settings. If I scroll down, I've got tint control here. So if I wanted to have it at play, I would have to move that up there a bit, and that would take some of the red out. So if you're using something like eCam, that will allow you to fine tune your cameras that bit more.